Your blood sugar came back normal. Your doctor said everything looks fine. But what if that result is actually hiding the real problem? One that's been quietly building inside your body for years, possibly decades. That's what we're breaking down today. I'm Dr. Steve Collins, and if you've never questioned what a normal blood sugar result actually tells you, and more importantly, what it doesn't, this might be one of the most important things you watch this year. Here's what most people never get told. Insulin resistance, the metabolic dysfunction driving type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and a cascade of other serious conditions, can be actively developing in your body for 10 years before your blood sugar ever shows up as abnormal on a standard test. 10 years. And during that entire time, your results look completely fine on paper. Your doctor sends you home reassured, and the damage continues. So if the test isn't catching it early, what is? That's exactly what we're walking through today. The warning signals your body is already sending, long before any lab result confirms the problem. And at the end, I'll show you one specific test that detects what standard blood work completely misses. But first, let's understand what's actually happening beneath the surface, because this is the part that most people, including a lot of healthcare providers, never fully explain. When you eat, your blood sugar rises. That's completely normal. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin. Think of insulin as your body's traffic control system. Its job is to direct glucose out of your bloodstream and into your cells, where it gets converted into usable energy. That's the system functioning exactly as it should. Now here's where it begins to break down. If you're consistently eating in a way that keeps insulin elevated, highly processed foods, refined carbohydrates, minimal fiber, minimal movement, your cells gradually start ignoring that insulin signal. They become resistant to it. So your pancreas does the only thing it can. It produces more insulin to compensate. And for a while, this works. Blood sugar stays in a normal range. Everything looks fine on paper. But behind that normal reading, your pancreas is working overtime. The demand is climbing. The system is under serious metabolic strain. Research suggests this compensation phase can persist for years, silently, before it finally starts to crack. The moment your blood sugar begins creeping upward on a test is not the beginning of the problem. It is the moment the compensation has failed. The underlying dysfunction has already been building for a very long time. By the time modern medicine notices, the damage is already well underway. So what are the earlier signals? Let's go through them and pay close attention, because several of these are things most people completely write off. The first is relentless hunger shortly after eating. Not mild hunger a couple of hours later, actual intense hunger within 60 to 90 minutes of finishing a full meal. Here's the mechanism. When you eat something high in refined carbohydrates, insulin spikes sharply. But if your cells are resistant to that signal, glucose doesn't enter them efficiently. Blood sugar then drops fast, sometimes below where it started. Your brain reads that drop as an emergency and triggers an urgent hunger response immediately. If this is a consistent pattern for you, that is not a willpower issue. That is a metabolic signal demanding attention. The second sign is compulsive carbohydrate cravings. Not occasionally wanting something sweet after dinner. We mean daily, persistent pulls toward bread, pastries, sugary drinks, anything starchy or refined. This is driven by the same blood sugar instability. Your brain keeps demanding fast fuel because the glucose cycle never stabilizes. You eat carbs, you spike, you crash, you crave carbs again. Insulin resistance sits right at the center of that loop, keeping it spinning continuously. Third is the afternoon energy collapse. You finish lunch and within an hour, you're fighting to stay alert. You reach for coffee. You need something sweet just to function through the rest of the day. Most people chalk this up to sleep or stress. But this pattern, specifically tied to meals, is one of the earliest metabolic signs we see clinically. Insulin surges, blood sugar drops, and your mitochondria, your cell's power stations, are starved of the fuel they need. You feel it directly as that crushing post-meal fatigue. Now watch this, because sign 4 is the one most people never connect to metabolism at all, and it may be affecting you right now. Brain fog. Difficulty concentrating after meals. Mental sluggishness that you've been blaming on screen time or stress. But here's what's actually happening. Your brain is one of the most metabolically demanding organs in your entire body, and it requires a stable glucose supply to function clearly. When insulin resistance starts affecting brain cells, and evidence suggests it does, cognitive sharpness starts to deteriorate. This connection is serious enough that some researchers have begun framing Alzheimer's disease as a form of advanced metabolic dysfunction. That framing alone tells you how significant this link has become in current science. Sign 5 is expanding waist circumference, even if your total body weight hasn't shifted. This distinction is critical. The number on the scale can stay exactly the same while visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat surrounding your liver, intestines, and heart, silently accumulates. This fat is metabolically active. It releases inflammatory signals that worsen insulin resistance, which drives further visceral fat gain, which releases more inflammatory signals. A simple home check. Measure your waist at navel level and divide it by your height. If that ratio exceeds 0.5, that's a warning sign worth acting on, regardless of what the scales say. Sign 6 is weight loss resistance despite genuine, consistent effort. You're moving more, you're eating better, the scale barely budges. There is a direct physiological explanation for this, and it has nothing to do with effort. Chronically elevated insulin is fundamentally a storage signal. It instructs your body to hold on to fat, particularly between meals, while actively suppressing the fat-burning pathways. Prioritizing protein and fiber at every meal and reducing refined carbohydrates helps stabilize insulin throughout the day and allows those fat release pathways to actually function. This is educational content, not medical advice. We're evidence-led here, and we always manage risk carefully. Sign 7 will genuinely surprise most people. Multiple skin tags, those small, soft tissue growths appearing around the neck, armpits, or groin. One or two is common and not particularly significant, but a cluster of them, especially combined with other signs on this list, has a clear biological explanation. At chronically elevated levels, insulin functions as a growth signal. It stimulates cell proliferation in skin tissue. If your body has been overproducing insulin for years, that signal can show up visibly on your skin in ways most people never connect to metabolism. Sign 8 is acanthosis nigricans, dark, slightly thickened, velvety patches of skin, most commonly appearing at the back of the neck or in the armpits. It can look like a shadow that simply won't wash away. It's caused by excess insulin activating the pigment-producing cells in your skin. Clinicians are specifically trained to recognize this because it's considered a classic physical marker of significant established insulin resistance. If you've noticed this and dismissed it as harmless, please have it looked at. Sign 9 is high blood pressure. Insulin resistance doesn't stay contained to blood sugar. It spreads through your entire cardiovascular system. Elevated insulin causes your kidneys to retain sodium, pushing blood pressure upward. It reduces the elasticity of your arterial walls, making them stiffer and less responsive. It also activates your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, which drives pressure up further. Many people discover metabolic problems precisely because blood pressure flags at a routine appointment. When these two conditions appear together, one should always prompt investigation of the other. Sign 10 involves your cholesterol panel, specifically a pattern that frequently gets overlooked. High triglycerides combined with low HDL, the protective cholesterol, is a powerful early metabolic warning. When your liver is overwhelmed by excess glucose, it converts that glucose into fat and pushes it into the bloodstream as triglycerides. HDL simultaneously drops. This specific combination can appear on blood tests years before blood sugar climbs at all. If your doctor has only focused on total cholesterol or LDL, ask directly about your triglyceride to HDL relationship. Request a copy of your own results and understand what each number means. Sign 11 is pre-diabetes confirmed on a standard test, an HbA1c creeping into borderline range, or a fasting glucose slightly elevated. This is the moment the compensation system begins to buckle. But here's what matters most. Prediabetes is also one of the most reversible points on this entire spectrum. It is not a minor finding. It is not a near miss to revisit in 12 months. It is a clear, urgent signal that the metabolic pressure has been building for years, and the window to reverse course is open right now. The earlier the action, the better the outcome. Sign 12 is fatty liver disease. When insulin-resistant cells can't absorb glucose properly, the liver takes in the overflow and converts it into fat stored inside its own tissue. Over time, this becomes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which can silently progress through inflammation to fibrosis, to cirrhosis, to liver failure. The most alarming aspect? The majority of people with this condition feel nothing. It's typically discovered by accident during an unrelated ultrasound or through mildly elevated liver enzymes on a routine panel that a doctor describes as something to keep an eye on. If you've been told your liver enzymes are slightly raised, now you understand exactly why that matters. So what do you actually do with all of this? The genuinely encouraging reality is that insulin resistance is one of the most reversible metabolic conditions we know of in medicine. Two changes in particular produce meaningful, measurable improvement. First, increase fiber and protein at every meal. Fiber slows glucose absorption from your gut. Protein activates satiety hormones that blunt the post-meal insulin spike. Together, they smooth out the blood sugar instability that drives the entire cycle. Second, walk for 10 minutes after eating. Even a brief post-meal walk activates your muscles to pull glucose directly out of the bloodstream for energy, reducing how much insulin your body needs to release in response. Small habit, profound metabolic effect. Now here's the part most standard care completely misses. Your doctor will almost certainly check fasting glucose and HbA1c, both blood sugar measurements. But remember what we established at the very beginning. Blood sugar is one of the last signals to change. What those tests don't capture is insulin itself. A fasting insulin test measures how hard your pancreas is working right now to hold your blood sugar in the normal range. If that insulin is elevated while glucose still looks fine, that's the warning sign before the warning sign. You can take this further with a calculation called HOMA-IR, which combines fasting glucose and fasting insulin into a single insulin sensitivity score. It is a far more sensitive early marker than glucose testing alone, and it's available privately through a number of labs if your doctor doesn't offer it routinely. Now ask yourself something honestly. How many of those 12 signs are things you've been experiencing and writing off as normal aging, stress, or just life? Because if you found yourself nodding through 3, 4, or 5 of them, that is not coincidence. That is your body sending a signal it has been sending for a long time. If this shifted something for you today, subscribe, because the next video in this series covers which specific foods are actively accelerating this process inside your body right now. And the answer may be something you eat every single day without suspecting a thing.